Morgan.
That's right. You can live on one. You know, we might want to talk.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Wednesday, October 8th meeting of the Lower Providence Township Board of Supervisors. This is our budget workshop meeting. If you could please all stand and join with me in reciting the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Deb, could you please call the roll call?
Absolutely. Mrs. Ekman.
Here.
Mr. Sergini.
Here.
Mr. Duffy.
Here.
Mr. Thomas. Here. Mrs. Zimmerman.
Here. Thank you. Okay, we're all here. Just one announcement. After our last board meeting, we held a brief executive session for one personnel matter, so I need to make that announcement. Okay, so first up, number one item on our agenda is our 2015 budget discussion, and Rich is going to give us a presentation on that.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight's presentation is the 2015 operating budget. Presentation that you got at your last meeting was the 2015 to 2019 five-year capital budget. This is the operating expenditures and revenues associated with 2015. This is the one-year budget that you're accustomed to adopting every year. And all the information on that budget is contained in the pink packet that you have before you. Starting off, in terms of 2014, we originally budgeted $1.7 million in the budget for beginning cash. But we did much better than the $1.7 million. We brought in $2,053,000. This year, we're anticipating ending 2014 with $2,117,000 at the end of the year. That is a projected surplus of $64,231. Now, at this time in the year, the only finances that I have to look at whenever we produce the budget are as of August. I have taken a look at September already. So I think we're going to beat this figure, but when we put the budget together for you, what we really had were figures for the end of August. September isn't closed yet. I've taken a preliminary look at it. I'm bullish on where we're headed for the end of the year. But for right now, so that the figures stand still, we're projecting a surplus of $64,231. Where does that come from? We're projecting out revenues of $9,678,000, very close to the amount that we're projecting in terms of expenditures of $9,614,000. Now, if you recall, in 2014, whenever we did the budget, we budgeted a $911,000 deficit. So the fact that we've made up that $911,000 in the budget and we're projecting a surplus shows you the kind of year that 2014 has been. It's been a pretty good year. Now, where are the variances from the budget? We're looking at the end of the year to finish with $2,117,000. That's an increase over our beginning fund balance of $2 million. First item, variance on the budget, is positive variance, is the $337,000 additional that we brought in at the beginning of the year in terms of our beginning fund balance. Second positive variance is the $930,000 that we're anticipating in additional revenue this year. That's above and beyond what we budgeted for 2014. Expenditures are a little different story. We're looking at maybe saving $45,502. That's not a whole lot. Now, some of the things that are happening there, we had a very tough winter. That's sort of bleeding out over, not only in terms of overtime, that's bleeding out over in terms of heating oil costs, that's bleeding out over in terms of vehicle repairs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that winter has more than just an effect on snow overtime, and equipment. It goes through the budget. But overall, we've got a positive variance of $1.3 million. That brings us up to that $2,117,000 figure at the end of the year. Now, this is our current tax rate. This is our real estate tax rate, 1.592 mils. The current assessment for the average home in Lower Providence is $167,232. That's the current assessment right now. Okay? That's per residential household. So when you're looking at your tax bill, if you kept the millage the same in 2015 at 1.592 mils, the average homeowner would be paying $266.22 in real estate taxes. Now, the breakup is as follows. General fund would constitute $151 of that total figure. The library fund would constitute $57 of that total figure. The debt service fund would constitute $16 of that total figure, actually $17. And Park and Rec would be associated with $40. These are the appropriate millages for each one of the funds. Any questions? Okay. This is your tax dollar. This is the millage, total millage right now. This is the millage, combined millage of the county, the township, and the school district. School district makes up 27.9 mils of your total tax bill. The county makes up 3.152. It's in blue. And the township is the smallest sliver of the pie at 1.592 mils. This is the same graph, same data, but in percentage form. School district is 85% of your tax bill. The county is 10% of your tax bill. And the township remains at 5% of your tax bill. That's where it was last year. That's where it was the year before. Really hasn't changed in terms of the total percentages. Real estate taxes. Probably our primary revenue source besides from earned income tax. Total assessed value for the municipality right now for Lower Providence is $1.6 billion. That leaves us with a mill value of $1.6 million. Now, when you take out, and Susan and Jerry will tell you this during the budget, you don't collect the entire $1.6 million. There's actually a collection rate. By the time you collect it, it's about a 96.5% of the total millage that you collect. By the time you do that, it's more like $1.5 million per each mill that you can count on. Now, what's outlined in green is 2014. This is our projected real estate receipts for this year. And what we're projecting this year, we're projecting that you're basically going to meet the budget at $1,385,000. As you can see, since 2008, there's been some years where the real estate receipts have actually gone down. Part of that is the assessment appeals that we're getting. And you see those when I send those to you. You know, there are multitudes of those. The other thing is that's starting to impact that a little bit is some of the commercial taxpayers are paying under protest. So we're forced to put part of that tax receipt in escrow while they hear their appeal on their assessment. So, but we're seeing a little bit of relief from some of that. And we think in 2015 that we're probably going to collect a little bit more, so we bumped it up to $1,395,000. Any questions? This is a graph that everybody likes to look at. The next couple graphs people like. With these graphs, it's good to be on the bottom as opposed to being on the top. This is Lower Providence. It's millage rate over the last 11 years. Since 2004, the millage rate went up 0.08 last year for the first time in 11 years for the library fund. As you can see, the county is just above us. They are the squares. Their millage rate went up just a tad in 2012. Basically, the difference between the township and the county has been pretty much the same over the last 11 years. Top line is the school district. As you can see, the school district has incrementally each year increased their taxes year after year over the 11-year period to its current rate of 27.9 mils. Did an analysis. There's 62 municipalities in Montgomery County. The average millage rate is 3.769 mils. Our millage rate is 1.592 mils, so we're well below the average. That puts us ranking in terms of the top municipalities with the lowest millages at 16th. That's our same position that we occupied in 2013. We haven't changed. That puts us in the top 25%. If you factor out those municipalities that don't have their own police force, because that's 51% of our budget. It's one of the largest expenditures. If you factor out those municipalities that depend upon the state police, we finish 8th overall. So we're very competitive whenever we're dealing with businesses and talking to them about what the tax burden is at Lower Providence. We've got an extremely competitive tax rate, you know, given the amount of service level that we provide to the businesses and to the residents. Any questions? This is another graph that it's good to be on the bottom of as opposed to being on the top of. The green bar is Lower Providence in terms of the ranking of overall millage comparisons. Now we expanded it a little bit so that you could tell where we are. This is us here. This is an expansion blow up of the 62 municipalities and those that are closest to us. Our two closest competitors are Franconian Township, and just above us is Plymouth. Real estate transfers. Our projected number for 2014, right now we're projecting $360,000. As you can see, last year we did really well, $550,000, $55,000. That was a series of turnovers at the corporate center in anticipation of the work that they were doing at 422, the $19 million exchange project that opened up two exits onto 422. So we had about 4 corporate centers that turned over last year. This year, real estate transfers have been lagging all year, but they've been catching up the last couple months. I've already got the benefit of seeing what's going on in September, although September isn't closed out. We just got the September report. It's pretty good. So we think that we're going to be able to beat that $360,000 figure. That's the budget figure for this year. And we put that in as our anticipated receipts. But as we go through this budget process, we'll probably be able to push that up a little bit. Now, for 2015, we estimated $360,000 again. We could probably juggle that up a little bit, but you don't want to get too optimistic about it because, as you can see, in 2012, 2011, 2010, and 2009, you were in and around that particular figure. So it's a pretty good figure to use for budgetary purposes. Any questions? Building permit revenues. We have budgeted $160,000 for building permit revenues in 2014. We're anticipating $276,000 for 2014. Why? The reason why is the Meadows. Once the Meadows comes in, it hasn't come in yet, but I anticipate seeing the Meadows for final approval at the first meeting in November. After we see them, they'll be submitting their building permits. They're already clearing off the site at Shenandoah in anticipation of bringing in their plan and getting the final development agreements approved. In 2015, we used the same figure basically for the budget. We increased it a little bit to $170,000 from $160,000. Now, I anticipate that that figure is going to go up. And the reason I anticipate that that figure is going to go up is because Shenandoah has approached us about an additional residential building out near Egypt Road, but they haven't submitted full plans yet. If they, in fact, if we've got a strong indication from them between now and the end of the year that they're going to do that project in 2015, which I think they're going to, we can boost that figure up. That doesn't mean that that's pure revenue. On the other side of that, there's always some building inspections that have to be done. So there'll be some additional contracted individuals that'll be doing the building inspections and that type of thing. But it will be some additional revenue for the municipality. Any questions? Earned income tax. We had a better year last year with the earned income tax. Right now we're anticipating $4,950,000 in terms of the earned income tax. We've budgeted $4.4 million, so it's a good year for earned income tax. Now in 2015, we're using the figure of $4,800,000. Why are we using that figure? Berkheimer every year gives us, we ask them for estimates on what their collections are going to be on the local service taxes as well as the earned income taxes. When they give us their figures, they give us a high and a low. I always take the high. I've worked with Berkheimer before. Berkheimer tends to be conservative. So I'm comfortable with taking the high figure from Berkheimer. Expenditures. Oh, any questions on the earned income tax? All right. Okay, expenditures. What we've graphed here for you is the 2012 level, 2013 budget level, 2014 budget level, and what we anticipate expending in 2014 is in blue. And then the final tan line is what we've budgeted for 2015. As you can see, administration, the costs associated with administration are anticipated to go up a little bit, but they're still going to be lower than what they were in 2013 and what they were in 2012. Finance, we've budgeted a little bit of an increase in finance, and that's associated with the finance coordinator position. So there's a little bit of a bump up there. You see it in 2015. Tax collector over the year, which we've increased what we reimburse her for, as well as what she gets in terms of per billing. So there's a little bit of a bump up there. Legal, this one's interesting. Legal is actually down from where it was in 2012 and 2013. and 2014, what we budgeted at. Now, we budgeted it back up close to where we had budgeted, a little bit above where we budgeted in 2014, just to be safe. We don't want to not be able to defend the township or be able to take proper legal action when we have to. But that's very encouraging, in terms of controlling the legal expenses. Energy, we've been able to control our energy costs pretty well. We're actually budgeting about the same that we budgeted back in 2012. Some of that's because of what we've done over at Public Works with the solar project. But we've tried to keep our energy costs down. I anticipate that some of those costs will go down even a little bit further next year, particularly with gasoline, and petroleum costs going down and the glut that's in the United States right now. I think that that'll all translate at the pump at some point. But right now we've basically used figures that anticipate expenditure levels close to what we've been at, with a little bit of a bump from 2014. Technology is up a little bit, but that's been one of my emphasis since I've been here, is to increase our technology budget, because we've got a tight staff, so the more technologically savvy we are, the more ability we have to take advantage of technology, the more productive we are. We've got a lot of cloud service built into that. We've got a lot of virus protection built into that. We've got a lot of email spam elimination built into that as well. And a lot of backup that we didn't used to have, and it's off-site. Engineering is down a little bit from 2012 levels at $25,000, but it's pretty flat. Building maintenance is just nudging up a little bit, and that's mostly because contractors are a little more expensive as the economy starts to heat up. Materials and supplies are a little bit more expensive this year than what they have been in the past. And we've had some issues with some of the furniture that we've had to replace in the last year or two because it's getting older. Police. As you see in 2015, we've been able to hold our police costs pretty steady through 2012, 13, and 14. We've had a series of officers that have retired, but we've hired young officers, and as those young officers move up through the steps, and the way their contract works is every 6 months they move up a step, plus there's a percentage increase associated with their salaries. As that goes on, we anticipate having some more expenditures going into 2015. That doesn't include any new additional police officers, but there is in the 2016 budget that you got, the 2-year budget. We did include an additional police officer in that budget. Fire department is pretty flat for the period of 2012 through 2015. Ambulance, you can't see it, but because it's so much smaller than what the other ones are, but we increased the ambulance budget by about $17,000. Why did we do that? We haven't increased the contribution we've made to the ambulance company in years and years and years, and they're in the process of building a building in cooperation with the township, so we bumped that up $17,000. Emergency management, another one that you really can't see because of the comparison with its bigger brothers. Emergency management, 2014, we had budgeted $3,000 for emergency management. That was in anticipation of having the county system, alert system. That system, if you talk to the chief, they're still not happy with where the county is with that system. So we're going to stay with the BlackBerry system. And so we're going from $3,000 up to $15,610. Community development, little bit of an increase. That whole increase is associated with permit reviews. which is associated with increased revenues, i.e. the meadows that we're getting. That's an increase for the contracted services that do our building inspections. There'll be additional hours associated with their inspections. So we had to bump up some of those expenditures that are in connection with the receipt of the revenues. Public Works has increased in 2015. The reason for that is we've been operating with Public Works that hasn't been a full Public Works. We haven't had a director. We've had an acting director. Now we have a full-time director. So you're seeing Public Works return to its full strength, and in addition, that reflects a standard 2.75% increase for the AFSCME employees that are part of the Public Works. Snow and ice, it's a little difficult to see, but this is 2014 in the blue, and you can see it's up. That's this year's winter, the impact of this year's winter with overtime and materials and supplies. We budgeted a slight increase for 2015. We didn't come up to where we are in 2014. Why? Because I've always tried to do basically a little bit beyond the average winter as opposed to trying to budget for the worst winter. So we've kept it around the average winter, a little bit above that in terms of the total expenditures that we anticipate for snow and ice. Stormwater, that's flat at $25,000. Are there any questions so far? Okay. Here's where some of the real expenditures are every year, and we try to control them. Pension contributions, we're doing a little bit better job of controlling it. As you can see, from 2012 to 2013 to 2014, it's been a jump every year. 2015, total jump of $41,000. That's a small jump for the pensions. I mean, that jump has been much bigger in the years before. Employee benefits. Benefits right now, we're anticipating a 1.8, so that is a sizable jump, but that's all under negotiation. We're negotiating with AFSCME, we're negotiating with the PBA, and we're negotiating with Divot, our health insurance provider. So that figure may change as we go through the budgetary process, and we anticipate that it will. Next figure, insurances. Same sort of scenario. This is our general insurances, public officials liability, general liability, workers' comp. They're all in this number. Now we anticipate right now $164,000, but all those numbers are under negotiation with our providers. So those numbers we anticipate will come down, but we wanted to be conservative and put a good number in there rather than raise it later on. Would rather lower it. Bottom line right now, general fund is increasing by 5.9%. Now that includes all those items I just talked about in terms of negotiations. Would go up to $10,200,000. So we anticipate that number will be reduced as we go through those negotiations. Some of the costs that the general fund gets, and I showed you this slide last year, are ever increasing. If we assume a 2.75% across the board increase, and that's all subject to negotiation, subject to the board's discretion, it would be $139,000, and I think they have to assume something in terms of the increase. Pensions, that's a pretty solid figure of $43,000. That is a solid figure, not a pretty solid figure. That's a solid figure. So that's a 4% increase overall. Workers' comp, we're going to be able to drop that figure. That's a $32,000 figure right now. General insurance is going up $20,000. We'll be able to drop that. Health insurance, we anticipate right now is going up $125,000. We think we'll be able to drop that. Another item that's in the budget, 3 police cars. and a replacement of a Dodge Charger, $125,500. That didn't used to be in the general fund. We started financing that when I was here, but I really think that it belongs in the general fund because you only get about 5 years out of those cars. So it's more of an operating expenditure as opposed to a capital expenditure, which you would generally assume with a capital expenditure. You get 10 years of life out of the capital expenditure. But with the police cars, you're really not getting that kind of life out of them. So general fund is pretty much, there are some increasing costs of almost $500,000. Now we're going to work on some of these, see if we can get them down. But it does get hit with costs that we just can't, avoid. So what's our projection for 2015? We're projecting a beginning balance of $2.1 million, revenues of $9.2, expenditures of $10.2, an ending fund balance at the end of 2015 of $1,156,000. Well, the problem with that is it's a deficit spending of $961,000. But then again, this year we had a deficit built in $911, and we overcame it. But it's becoming increasingly difficult for us to overcome those scenarios. Debt service fund. Not everything is a general fund. We've got other funds. One of the funds that we have is the debt service. That's where we handle all our debt. That's fund number 20. What are its sources of revenue? One of the most important sources of revenue is the real estate tax. That's 0.101 mils. That brings in $160,000 a year. Another important source of revenue is the lease on the golf course. That brings in $100,000 a year. Then we have a transfer from the library fund because the debt service fund pays for the library debt of $114,000. So they transfer $114,000 out of their fund back to the municipality to pay that. Then we have a transfer from the general fund of $152,000, and that goes towards the old municipal authority, i.e. the golf course debt, and the general fund is paying for that. Then we have a transfer from the unrestricted capital of $106,000. That's for the 2013 loan associated with the road resurfacing, the 3 police cars, the truck, and the new server for the township. Okay, total of $633,000. These are all the notes that the debt service is paying for. The ones I just ran through. Library 2006 note, $114,000, pay for the library building. 2006 note from the municipal authority, which expires in 2022. That's the golf course. That's the first loan that was taken out on the golf course, $85,476. Second note, 2008 note to the municipal authority, expires in 2024. That's the open space acquisition associated with the golf course, $329,000. Then in 2013, police cars, the truck, the server, that total loan was $325,000. It's got its annual payment of $50,517. Then in 2013, we also took out a loan for an amount of $520,000 to resurface the roads. That particular loan cost us $56,000. And the revenues basically equal the expenditures at $635,000. Any questions? I saw a slide similar to this during the capital budget presentation. PIB note, it's actually not a PIB loan anymore. It's a 2010 note, but everybody refers to it as a PIB loan. It'll expire in 2016. When it expires, we'll make our last payment of $484,000. This slide used to be a lot more devastating. It used to be 95% of our liquid fuels allotment went to paying off just that loan. Now it's 75%, courtesy of the transportation bill, which has increased the amount of liquid fuels allocations that we get every year. Okay? Starting in 2017, we'll still owe, even though we'll make our last big payment on what everybody refers to as the PIB loan, we'll still owe $40,000 a year. That's because in 2010, you retired the PIB loan, and at the same time when you refinanced it, you took out a loan on a truck. So the loan on the truck continues, and that's a $40,000 a year loan. We added to it this year with road resurfacing for 2014 and 2015 at a 10-year loan at 2.1%, financed $1 million worth of road resurfacing. Our road resurfacing included Crawford, it included Rittenhouse, it included Surrey, and it included Church Road this year. Next year, we've got the series of roads that are lined up as well, and that $1 million will cover the resurfacing of those roads. Annual interest rate on that is 2.11%. One of our other big funds is the unrestricted capital fund. It's going to start the year. That's really one of our reserve funds. It's going to start the year with $1 million, $3,166 in it. Transfers to debt service will be that loan that I talked about from 2013 for the roads, the truck, police cars, and the server, $106,000. Also, we're earmarking $12,000 in terms of 3 unmarked vehicles, leasing those vehicles for the police department. It costs $12,000. The ending fund balance associated with that will be $886,000 at the end of 2015. Park and Rec. There's 2 Park and Rec funds, but we'll talk about the operating fund tonight. We already talked about the capital fund associated with Park and Rec. Park and Rec, their total budget, operating budget, is $782,148. Part of that is supported by millage. 0.241 mils helps support the Park and Rec fund. That brings in $382,688 a year. The remainder of the fund is supported by the general fund or by the fees that we generate. Now, this year we anticipate a deficit in the operating fund of $35,512 as of the end of 2015. Okay. This year it's closer to $15,000 or $16,000. But Carl and Susan are going to work on that and see if we can get that figured down. I think there's still going to be a deficit associated with it. We're going to try to pull some revenues up. We're going to try to pull down some of the expenditures. We've got some ideas about that, but right now, that's where our projections are. Now, otherwise, the general fund picks up every year. Cost of benefits, office costs associated with Park and Rec to the tune of $146,000. So that's an additional burden on the general fund that it's picking up. This will give you a historical perspective of the general fund in terms of our deficits versus the surpluses. 2007, we had a surplus of $465,000. 2008, there was began a series of deficits, $168,000 2008, $662,000 2009, $82,000 2010, and then $404,000 2011. 2012, mid-year, we took strong steps to stop that bleeding. So we got it back to $25,000 in terms of a surplus, not much of a surplus, but much better than a deficit. Last year we had a wonderful year, $1.3 million. This year I think we'll do better than the $64,000 that we've estimated. But any questions? Where are we going with the general fund and the unrestricted fund? Those are two real players. Besides from the liquid fuels. Liquid fuels has become much more of a player since the transportation bill was passed. But Our two resources for expenditures are the unrestricted fund, Fund 39, and the general fund. What I try to show here is anticipate, because we did a 2-year budget for you, and we did a 5-year capital for you. So we projected out what will happen if our projections right now, which are conservative, hold up. As you can see here, in 2012, we had a good event where the revenues started to exceed the expenditures. The expenditures are in red, the revenues are in green. However, expenditures are starting to catch up with revenues. Now, do I think that we'll be able to push these revenues up a little bit? Do I think we'll be able to pull down the revenues a little bit? Yeah. But there's starting to be a break between the two. And when that happens, what happens to the general fund balance, which is in black, the general fund balance gets decreased every time that happens. So if we follow what our figures are right now, and they're conservative right now, in 2016, the unrestricted capital reserve will be okay, but the general fund will be in trouble. So we may want to take some action this year as we go through the process to remedy that in advance. These are the burdens on the general fund and unrestricted capital. First, you've got that general fund debt service for the golf course that the general fund is picking up. Traditionally, municipalities, whenever there's debt service, they assign it to debt service. They assign a millage associated with it. They don't pick it up through their general fund. That's the purpose of the debt service fund. Park and Rec, not so traditional. A lot of municipalities pick up their Park and Rec fund or costs through the general fund. But right now, we anticipate the general fund, is being picked up. The general fund's picking up about $181,000 of the Park and Recreation fund's responsibilities. Unrestricted capital is picking up the debt service. That too is kind of unusual. Again, traditionally, when municipalities have debt service, it's picked up through the debt service, and it's pay as you go with the debt service millage picking it up. So there's really about $452,000 that either is being picked up by the general fund on an annual basis or picked up by the unrestricted capital reserve every year. Okay, millage options. If you wanted to, as we go through, if you wanted to consider some millage options to get rid of that burden, the debt service, if you wanted to eliminate all the $270,000 in debt service that gets applied to the unrestricted capital and the general fund, the millage would have to go from 0.101 mils to 0.276 mils. If you're going to ask me for a recommendation, I would recommend that if you're going to do anything, that's what you do. That would bring in an additional $270,000. That would eliminate both the debt that the unrestricted capital is picking up. That would eliminate the debt that the general fund is picking up. Cost would be $29.22 to the average taxpayer. That would be an increase of $2.43 a month. One of the other options, which I don't favor, is eliminating the Park and Rec costs. As I said, traditionally municipalities pick that up through their general fund, but you do have a Park and Recreation millage. If you were to look at that and consider that option, that would be an additional millage increase of 0.117 mils versus the 2.41 mils now, for a total of 0.357 mils. Additional cost of $19.53 or $1.63 a month. If you wanted to combine the two, the increase would be over a quarter a mil. It would be 0.291 mils, at an additional cost of approximately $48.50 per residential household, or $4.04. Yeah, that could be, it's actually .291, but it could be a .290. Yeah. Once you advertise the budget, you have 20 days that it has to be open for inspection. At the end of the 20 days, you can enact the budget, but you can't increase the overall budget by more than 10%. And in an individual major category, you can't increase it by more than 25%. We'll track that for you. You can always decrease the budget. If you advertise a budget, you can always decrease it during that 20-day period without any problems under the code. But if you try to increase it by more than 10% overall, or by 25% in an individual category, that will run against the code. Some of the things we've accomplished this year, township's gotten the first, second, and third place in citizen communications. We've closed out the waterline project. Soon you're going to be seeing that we're going to be paying, it gives me agita, but we're going to be paying DEP back for the grant, at least $75,000. We closed that project under budget. As everybody can see as you drive into the township today, the ambulance squad is well under construction. We've been cooperating with them during the year. We broke ground on the Route 422 project in cooperation with Senator Rafferty and Representative Verb's office. October the 20th at 1 o'clock, the Arcola Road Bridge is supposed to have groundbreaking. We've been meeting with them on a once every 2-week basis. So we're glad to see that taking off finally. We had, if you saw the lights up at the Park and Rec field for the Wolverines, we cooperated with them on the lights. And here's one that probably most people don't know about, because everybody read about the Moody's downgrade. Well, we had another visitor. We had Standard & Poor. Standard & Poor visited us. They interviewed us for 2.5 hours. And we were able to increase our credit rating not 1 step, but 2 steps. So they increased us from an A+ to a AA. Okay, that concludes my presentation. Any questions?
Me?
I'll just, I guess I don't really question, more comment, and then we can go down the row if we want to. So a little surprising was your 2014 numbers for Community Development Department, and you mentioned that it was because of permits and inspections increase. So I would like to make sure going forward for 2015, one, we're thoroughly going through those invoices to make sure we're being charged appropriately. There's been some issues in the past, and so I hope you're continuing checking all those. And maybe we can negotiate a better hourly rate since there's an increase in work. And if it's something we need to look at another third party that will give us a better price, then maybe we should be doing that.
I'm perfectly willing to do all that. What you're seeing is we anticipate, when we did the budget, we anticipated, one, that we're going to receive the building permits before the end of the year. So two, we anticipated probably too much for 2014. We'll probably have to juggle that to 2015 as opposed to 2014. We anticipated that our inspections would be going up, but we haven't seen the development agreement yet, and it's not been on the board's agenda. Okay. So you're probably not going to approve it till November, but when we're doing the budget, we're thinking, well, at the time, they'll be ready to go by October. But they're not ready yet.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
But yeah, in terms of bringing in a third party, I'm perfectly open to, interviewing other inspection firms and going back to LTL and seeing if we can negotiate a different rate for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Want to go down the row?
First of all, thank you, Rich and staff, for all the work you've done with the budget. With streamlining expenses over the last couple of years, I think we have streamlined to every extent possible at this point. For those who watched the budget process last year, you'll recollect how I feel about funding the debt service. I think that's something that we had a responsibility to do last year, and we did not. And I would advocate for making sure that we fulfill that responsibility this year.
Thank you, Rich, for your presentation, and don't have any specific questions for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rich, thank you very much. I guess most of mine, when I was going over the budget, were item specific. I noticed, with Public Works, we're spending $100,000 a year in just truck maintenance. And it's probably, or that's what we're budgeting, truck maintenance, when, I don't know how many trucks we have or what we need to do to get that. It seems like we can't just keep spending. I know in the budget here, there's 4 new police cars and 3 leases of police cars. That's 7 new police cars a year. I think that clearly on your presentation, we can't keep spending beyond what we bring in. So we got to either come up with a way to make sure that our revenues are up, and I'm not in favor of taxes, but I'm more in favor of making sure that our expenditures stay steady or decrease. So that would just be my thought. And
Yeah, what you're seeing there in terms of the increase in maintenance and repair, a lot of that is either associated with repairs to the plows, the trucks, all associated with the winter wear that occurred. We just had an abominable winter, and some of it, showed up several months later. The additional wear and tear on the vehicles and the equipment, just showed up during the year. So it's an unusually high maintenance and repair that we ended up doing this year. We also had some cars that failed as well, a police car that had a major mechanical problem. From a terms of repairs, vehicle repairs, trucks repairs, it was an unusual year, most of it associated with the weather that we had this year, and associated with the fact that our fleet is aging as well. So as you have an increased age associated with your fleet, you've got additional maintenance or repair associated with
that was certainly one of my concerns. I know one of the items in the budget for us to consider is a new truck. For this year and a new truck for next year. And obviously, since the trucks are 25 years old, I'm sure they're at the end of their lifespan and that they'll need to be replaced. But is that something that we're considering if we're buying new trucks, and the payments is obviously the maintenance on the rest of the fleet going to be decreased if we're buying new trucks?
Yeah, we've considered part of that. We're not replacing enough of the trucks quick enough, though, to really make a big impact on the maintenance and repair. So it was still kept a rather conservative figure in association with the maintenance and repair going forward. If you look at the capital budget that we presented at the last meeting, we've got most of our heavy equipment up for replacement in 2017, beginning that 2017, 18, 19. But those are like a 1993 truck, 2 1993s, 1995 truck. Well, by then it's 2017. So we're trying next year to replace one of the trucks. We're basically taking a break in 2016, and then we're picking it up, and replacing a truck every year after that. But there's limits to what we can finance. There's limits to what we can do, in terms of replacing them.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If I might just interject,
Sure.
if you don't mind. You're referring to 433 43375, Mr. Duffy. The line item 01-43375.
Let me go here. Had it marked here. Which page is it on in the?
Page 9. My page 9.
Yeah, yeah. I was referring to,
Under Public Works, 430,
yes,
375, truck and vehicle repairs.
yes.
Okay, just to clarify, and I think Mr. Gestrick touched on it, that includes the police vehicles also. That's all vehicles. That's not just the Public Works trucks.
Okay,
I
so-
didn't, so it includes the trucks, the equipment associated with the trucks, the police vehicles, and the equipment associated with the police vehicles.
Okay.
So that's an all-in, it's all encompassing as
so
far
that's
as the
for-
entire fleet.
So that's for all probably vehicles that the township owns and maintains?
That's correct.
Not just specific to the Public Works
That's
Department?
correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
That makes
Because,
it a little more tolerable than if it's just,
yeah.
you know, you're
and
doing it
that's-
across 3 or 4 different departments.
Correct. It's every vehicle in the fleet, and it goes under Public Works because the 2 mechanics are direct reports to Mr. Primus.
Okay, thank you.
And then with respect to the vehicles for next year, the vehicles that we anticipate replacing are a 2007 Crown Vic that presently has 124,830 miles on it. That's an all-time record. We've never had a sedan go that high. A 2008 Crown Vic that presently has 96,000 miles on it. A 2011 Explorer that presently has 93,000 miles on it. And a 2007 Charger, which presently has 87,790 miles on it. So that'll be probably over 100,000 at the time. They're all going to be well over 100,000 at the time of replacement. So as of September 30th, they're the mileages, and they're the vehicles that we anticipate replacing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And in anticipation of that question, I had Mr. Primus put together all the vehicles that we've repaired this year and their associated costs. So I bet he wants to say something about that.
Yes, I have a breakdown of all the major issues we had this year, and it comes to over $44,000 just for this year for engine problems. And the beginning of the year, we had to spend over just close to $10,000 just on plow parts. So if Rich wants me to email this to you, I'd be glad to.
Great, I
So you can
appreciate
look
that.
at it. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
But you didn't mention it, so then the 3 leased vehicles are a continuation of the new leases we took out last year, correct?
Now, actually, they are 3 leases that were initiated this year, 2014. They were effective as of August 1st of this year.
Okay.
And they're a 3-year term. And what we want to do is we want to rotate those cars because of the type of work that they do.
Sure. I apologize. When I said last year, I meant last year's budget. I'm
Correct. Yeah.
I'm jumping ahead.
2014. Yes, they were
Yes.
effective August 1st, 2014.
Okay.
Yeah, those are all lease purchases. No,
No.
no.
Now, our previous
Ones were lease
lease
purchases,
purchases.
but the ones going forward
that
will
we
not
didn't know
be.
were purchases until we went to close out the lease, and we found out that we owned them.
Yeah.
Communication issue several years ago. These are straight leases, so at the end of the lease, we go back, we turn them in. So we do not own these vehicles, we have no equity in these vehicles, they're straight leases.
What did you end up doing with the lease purchases then?
The lease-
Auction.
Oh,
No, actually, 2 of the lease purchases went to auction. A vehicle that we had been titled from the district attorney's office went to auction, and the 1 lease purchase we've retained as a covert vehicle.
okay. Thank you, Ron.
My turn.
Your turn.
Thanks for the presentation. It was very informative. I don't have any questions for you.
Okay.
Well, I'll put it fairly simple. I know you're going back and you're going to reevaluate the numbers as they come in. I would like to see, I mean, you're looking at about $1 million over expenditures for 15 over revenue, right? In
That's
essence.
correct. Yeah, 965,000.
Yeah, I'd like to see that, if possible, number get down to maybe half of that, which with insurance and different negotiations, I think you might be able to do that, and you've done wonders in the past. And then with that, to simplify it, then looking at the potential of a tax increase, a millage increase, I think it would be appropriate for us to consider both the debt service increase and the park and rec increase, all in all. But that's if you can get it, you know, your deficit down, cut it in half, if that makes sense, yeah. My concern is going forward, not in 2015, but in 16, I don't want to keep taking out loans for vehicles if that's not necessary. So I think it's time we start to evaluate those reserve funds, make sure we get them in check so that we're not adding, you know, to that, a bond every year, because that's just getting a little out of hand for me. So that's just my thoughts. So I think that would lead us to say we would have to have a second budget meeting?
Oh.
You'll
Yeah, you're definitely going to have a
You'll be-
second budget meeting.
Okay. All right. So if that's it for comments from the board, I would open it up, comments to department heads if you wanted to add anything. Thank you very much, and I know it's amazing the amount of time you have to put into this, and it seems like every year you turn around and here comes another budget down the road, so we do appreciate the effort. I swear we just did this. So how about we open it up to the audience? We do have a few audience members. Anyone have any questions? Okay, hearing none. We can call for the adjournment.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, except by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, thank you. So the next budget meeting will be October 21st, but our regular business meeting will be October 16th. Okay? Thank you.